Shared with you before this story about when I was a boy growing up Catholic in an Italian neighborhood in Queens, New York. I would often see at church these old Italian ladies down on their knees with their rosary beads, and they would be saying these rote prayers over and over again. And I thought, how silly. How superstitious. When I left the Catholic Church and I started to explore other faith traditions, I began to see Hindu and Buddhist monks down sitting in the lotus position. And they would be praying with these mala beads. And they would be chanting these mantras over and over again. And I said, oh wow, how cool, look at them, they're so spiritually connected. And then I got it, that those old Italian ladies saying the rosary were doing the exact same thing. Now I share that story again with you because it was my exploration of the Eastern faith traditions that has helped me to understand this Transfiguration story much better than I understood it as a boy. I want to really stress again that opening ourselves up to an understanding of other faith traditions, which is in our church's mission statement, does not at all threaten our Christian faith. In fact, what it does is it strengthens it for us. This story of the Transfiguration, what happens to Jesus, he's up there on the mountain praying, and he becomes transformed in this light, is very much about what we hear about in the Upanishads, which is the Hindu scripture, which was written thousands of years before Jesus was born. In that scripture, we hear about the Kundalini. The Kundalini is the awakening of the spiritual energy inside of you. And during meditation, during yoga, remember I shared with you before, yoga means union with God. During that time of prayer and meditation, that Kundalini, that spiritual energy is awakened. Then some of you may be familiar, both in Hinduism and Buddhism, with this term called samadhi. Samadhi is the highest state of spiritual awareness. It's like nirvana. And it means that when you are in prayer and meditation, you get to a place where for a moment you lose all human consciousness and you become one with the divine consciousness. This is what happened to Buddha under the Bodhi tree, where it said he reached enlightenment. And the word enlightenment means full of light. What happened was, as he's sitting there in prayer and meditation, united with the divine light, it became manifest in him. This is what Jesus is experiencing up on the mountain. Now, I've shared with you before, whenever you hear about a mountain in the scripture, it symbolizes the place of higher consciousness. You're removing yourself from the consciousness of the world, and you're going to a higher place. And in that place, Jesus is transformed in this white light, this light of God. And you see that the disciples who are with him are terrified, it says, as they would be. Now, you can go on YouTube, and you can watch videos of yogis who are in the state of samadhi, that they are in deep, deep meditation, and that they have connected with this divine consciousness within them, and they are in a place of great, great bliss and ecstasy. This is the purpose of prayer, is it's to unite us with God, to unite our heart with the divine heart, and our mind with the divine mind. That is the purpose of that time together. Now, if you look in the dictionary, you will see that the word transfiguration means a complete change of form into a more spiritual state. A complete change of form into a more spiritual state. This is what happens to us in prayer and meditation. And I know I say this almost every single Sunday, but remember, Jesus said, all of the things that I have done, you can do, these and greater. Jesus isn't saying, I'm the only one that can be transfigured. Build a temple up here and honor me. In fact, he does the opposite. He tells the disciples, don't build a temple, and we've got to go down the mountain, and don't say anything about this to anybody. Jesus is saying, I was transfigured in the light, and so can you. You can enter the state of samadhi. You can awaken this kundalini energy, and you can be the light. That's why Jesus said, you are the light of the world. That's what he said. Do you believe it? That you are the light of the world? Because that's what he's saying that you are. And he said, I made it manifest, and so can you. That's what it means to be a Christian and to follow my way. Saint Athanasius said, Christ became human so that humans could become Christ. That's what we're here to do, to manifest that Christ light that Jesus was able to do. Now, scientists have proven that pretty much every element on the planet Earth was formed from the heart of a star. The famous scientist Carl Sagan said, we are made of star stuff. And his quote is, the cosmos is within us. We are a way for the universe to know itself. So we're made of stars. And I think there's been quite a few songs about that. Way back from, some of you may remember Joni Mitchell at Woodstock had the song where she said, we are stardust. And then in the 90s, Moby had that song called We Are All Made of Stars. And Coldplay has a song on the charts now that says, you're a sky full of stars. And that is the truth. We have within us that star stuff that Carl Sagan spoke about. This is what I refer to as God's DNA, God's light. The universe is within us, and we are to make it manifest. Now, how did Jesus connect with that light? He did it through prayer. Every single time in the gospel when he goes off to pray, he goes away. He either goes into the desert or he goes up to mountains. He removes himself so he can be alone with God and to connect with this light. Now, what I want for us to understand is we have to kind of move away from what we were taught as children, what prayer was. And sadly, I think many of us still pray like children. We haven't moved to a higher understanding of what prayer is. What I mean by that is when you were a kid, you'd kneel by your bed and you'd have your hands folded like you were pleading. Prayer was a plea. And you'd say, God, please let me get an A on my test tomorrow. God, please let me get a puppy for my birthday. And I think for so many of us, that's what we still think prayer is. That you're pleading to God to make something happen for you. Please let me get a job. Please make my mother be better. Like we're trying to change God's mind. Like we could even do that. Richard Rohr said, prayer is not a wish list to God of your wants and needs. Prayer is emptying yourself so that God can fill you. So I want us to say that what Jesus is doing when he's praying is he's not talking to God. He's listening to God. That's why in this reading today, the gospel reading, the key word for me is listen to him. Listen. That's what we're doing in prayer. If your prayer involves talking, and words, I want you to shift that. It's okay to bring your requests before God, but you know what? God already knows them. You don't think God knows what's on your heart? If you speak it out loud, yes, that's helpful for you. But God already knows it. So our purpose of prayer is to get silent so that we can listen to God. Now, one of my favorite quotes from Scripture comes from Romans 12, verse 2. And it says, "Be ye transformed through the renewal of your mind." This scripture today, the Transfiguration, is about a transformation. And the gospel tells us that we will be transformed through the renewal of our minds. Our minds are full of thoughts. They're often negative thoughts. They're thoughts of worry and doubt and fear and lack and limitation. So when we're sitting alone there, it is hard for us to remove those thoughts. But the only way we'll be transformed in this light is if we renew our minds. Now, I supplement my Bible study with a book called The Message. The Message, it was written between 1993 and 2003, fairly recently. And the person who wrote it is a minister whose name is Eugene Peterson. And what he did was he rewrote the Bible in the way that we speak today, in the 21st century. He didn't mean it to replace the Bible, he just meant it as a supplement to the Bible. And this book has sold millions and millions of copies. And one of the things that really helped it was Bono, the lead singer of U2, was being interviewed on 60 Minutes. And Bono said, "The most important book that I have ever read is called The Message." Now, I share that with you because when I looked in The Message to see how this was translated, it says, "Fix your attention on God, and you will be changed from the inside out." Fix your attention on God, and you'll be changed from the inside out. This is a continuation of my message from last Sunday, where I talked about we are so used to taking our cues from the outside. That's how most of us live. This is what society tells us we should be. This is what our culture tells us we should be. This is what our family tells us we should be. And so that's how we live, from the outside in. What we're called to do is to live from the inside out. Not to take our cues from the world, but to take our cues and our direction from the divine voice within. And how can we listen to that divine voice unless we get quiet? That's why it says, "Be still and know." We've got to get still. We've got to quiet and renew our minds so that we can bring forth that light and connect with it. Now, next Sunday is the first Sunday of Lent. And Lent is the perfect season for doing this. Because Lent is all about dying. It's about letting go of the things that no longer serve you. Letting go of those negative thoughts. Letting go of those worries and fears and doubts. And then what happens after the Lenten season is you let go of all of that so that you can resurrect the light that's within you. Like Richard Rohr said, you're emptying yourself so that God can fill you, so that you can be transfigured and transformed and be the light of the world that Jesus said that you are.